Come see the real history and story of El Salvador at the Museo Nacional del Arte, or MUNA, the National Museum of Art. First of all, remember my video about healing El Salvador's history? If not, please go back and watch that video and share it. There is nothing more important than El Salvador moving forward and healing the trauma of war.
Pipiles, culture traditional in El Salvador. One room, the Sonido del Muna is the name for my teacher.
Cool.
Is
a drum?
No, it's flute.
Oh, that's the flute. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Oh, it's
So do we
very
get to
nice.
play?
Yes. You?
The museum starts with these rock carvings that show you some of the ancient art of El Salvador. Across the way from these is a beautiful mural that has paintings and depictions of different parts of the history of El Salvador. This would be a great trivia game if you had kids or anyone who had studied the beautiful and rich history of El Salvador.
Para ustedes de la pieza del mes que estará a cargo de la maestra Claudia Alfaro Moisa de la Unidad de Investigaciones y Curaduría, a quien le cedo la palabra para que hable un poco sobre la pieza que ha seleccionado dentro de todas las que guardan en los depósitos del museo.
Porque la arqueología y dona pues un gran lote de objetos personales que pertenecieron a Juan Secales, que todos sabemos que fue el compositor, que fue el efector de la letra de los libros.
First man you saw was actually the museum director. I thought he was just a guide and asked him to give us a tour, but he was kind enough to share his passion and the changes that are happening in the museum. This was the letter opener of Juan José Cañas, or the writer of the national anthem of El Salvador. I came with some of my friends that had never been here before. It was a great adventure and learning experience for them also. Further in, there is the founder of MUNA, or Dr. David Guzman. And then to my favorite part of the whole museum has to be the sounds of the MUNA.
Y otro aspecto que tenemos que tomar en cuenta es la seguridad y que garantice tanto la conservación de las piezas como de posibles hurtos que puedan existir. Entonces se tiene que buscar de alguna manera estos espacios cumplir con las condiciones de seguridad mínima para poder existir. Y otro aspecto es la seguridad de la conservación, en la medida de lo posible que esté en condiciones de temperatura normal, que utilizamos iluminación que no genere calor, con el tiempo pues.
There's no way to know for sure exactly what the pipil music sounded like, but having left the beautiful instruments and artistry, you could only imagine the sounds wafting over the volcanoes over 300 years ago. The museum is also moving forward with technology and incorporating it to become more interactive for children. For example, a high-sensitivity camera is set up where the kids can stand in front and go through a learning language program that teaches them Nahuatl, or the ancient language of the Pipil. The next section of the museum shows some of the history of El Salvador's agriculture. And of course, you can't talk about El Salvador's past unless you talk about cash crops that were used, especially maíz or corn, because tortillas are life in El Salvador, and you cannot have a meal in El Salvador without them. Other products that were also a big part of El Salvador's history is añil, which is a plant that is grown and used to make indigo or blue dye. Cacao at one time was actually used as currency. I think that would be dangerous for me to live in a country that used chocolate for currency. The rest of the museum starts with the whole history of this region of El Salvador, starting all the way from the nomadic tribes that wandered all throughout the Americas thousands of years ago. Then it moves forward into the pre-classic period. On from there, it goes to the classic period and late classic period, up to even where the Mayan civilization eventually crumbled and they immigrated into parts of El Salvador and formed the Pipil people that spoke Nahuatl, where the Mayans spoke Nahuatl. This land was called Cuscatlan, and then of course the Spaniards came. And unlike all the other tribes in America, it took them 2 times to actually come in and conquer the Pipil people. This exhibit was most interesting to me because it describes the women's contribution to the conquest of America. From that, it continues on to El Salvador's independence and the beginning of towns, and of course, the beginning of mestizos, or the blending of Spaniard blood with the natives here in El Salvador. They also have a very unique copy of the Constitution from 1824. On from there, it goes more and more into the constant migration that this country has almost constantly been involved in, with people moving through, moving out because of war and conflict, or even up to now, where people are moving back in. El Salvador has always been a land that is given to whoever chose to live upon it. And once again, El Salvador is giving its best. So if you are coming to El Salvador, make sure you dar su mejor para El Salvador. We ended our tour with a concert from the marimba, or El Salvador's native instrument, brought over actually from slaves from Africa. Hope you liked your tour. Run by the museum anytime you can. You will definitely travel more, live more, and be more after having learned all about the history of this beautiful country. And the best way to finish off the Museo experience is with some fried yuca and fried plantains and a movie. Let's head.
Haciendo.